Good morning and welcome back. We're going to get on with this e-bike conversion today. First off, we'll quickly recap on what we did yesterday. Then we're going to move on and have a little chat about brake sensors, the pros and cons of brake sensors and what we're actually going to do on this bike. And then we'll get on to fitting the instrument panel, which I suspect is probably going to cause us a few problems. Okay, so I'll spin you around and we'll quickly recap what was done yesterday. Now the battery's on. As you saw yesterday, we've got the roots in. I'm happy with that. We're still going to put a foam layer between here just to cushion the shock. And then, of course, we're going to take these wires here out of the bottom of the battery and straight into the frame, down to make a connection into here, basically. So that's going to have to be altered as well. Okay, so now we're on the subject of brake sensors. And I'll tell you now, we're not fitting brake sensors to this bike here, and I'm going to explain why. Okay, so I'm going to take you over to my bicycle. These are the ones that design the brakes that come with it for V-brakes. And I've actually got the sensor built into the brake lever, which is, brilliant. They work great, no problem at all. But then when you've got a hydraulic brake, they don't give you replacement levers. What you do is you get this sort of system here, which is this sort of adhesive sensor on here, and then you normally get one magnet. This is built up 3 magnets on it because the angle it isn't close enough to work. Not a great system. Any hot country, we've got anything that's self-adhesive, it often gets soft and falls off. It's often the case. And these magnets are so easy to catch, you can often knock them off completely. These are actually glued on with a resin glue. And then you've got the problem of trying to retrace the wire because your bike won't work and disconnect it, which is what's happened here on the other side. So yeah, and you can see this one here is also, it's unglued and slid down. So yeah, not a good system. Now, there are options. I've looked on AliExpress, and they actually do levers, hydraulic levers, which have got built-in sensors, because then you've got to drain the system and fit them. They also do another thing which I thought was really handy if I was going to go down that route, which is a hydraulic brake lever, which has actually got, you pull the brake on and then you can apply a catch, which locks the brake off, a bit like a handbrake, which I thought, well, that would be well handy when you're parked up on the side of a mountain on an incline, just have that handbrake to go on. It's the same sort of thing as you'd find on, say, a quad bike. So yeah, that was another option. But then when I stopped and thought about it, I thought, well, hang on a minute, do I really need these sensors on the front? What are the pros and cons of it? And I come to the conclusion there wasn't really any. I don't know about you guys out there, but I never pedal and brake at the same time. When I want to slow down or stop, I stop pedaling and then I apply the brakes. Well, as soon as you stop pedaling, the motor stops going. It shuts down. So it kind of makes you putting the brakes on after kind of redundant, the brake sensors, because you don't need the brake sensors to shut the motor down. You've already shut that down by stopping pedaling. So yeah, so you don't really need them for that. Now, another thing that they can be handy on sometimes is when you've stopped and you dismount to walk. And there's been occasions in the past when we first got the e-bikes where both me and Anthea ended up on our arse with skinned shins because we're pushing the bike along. And the pedals, we've knocked the pedals with our shins and they've started the motor going and the bike's pulled away from us. On one occasion, it nearly pulled me off a cliff. We've learnt from that. And now what we do, much as you would with a motorcycle, as we come to a stop, we actually put the pedal assist into actual zero, which you could do on these bar phones. You start off on one when you first spark up, but you click them down into zero. And that's what we do now, much the same as you do a motorcycle into neutral. And then we get off the bicycle and then we do our manoeuvring, then we get back on our bicycle, we put it on pedal assist 1. And I certainly recommend to anybody out there, I suspect an unintended safety feature by Barfang is whenever your backside is not in that saddle, you need to make sure that pedal assist is on zero. When you imagine, you're mounting the bike, getting onto the bike before you take off, and you've got on pedal assist 1, which is what automatic goes into the program, and then you click the pedal while you're trying to get on and it pulls away from you. So like I say, that kind of makes the brake sensors, obsolete there as well, because I mean, yes, when the bike does pull away from you accidentally, you automatically pull the brake levers on and it does stop it, but if you've got it in zero, you don't really need it. So that brings me along now to the pros of not having brake sensors, and the number one for us being is we do a lot of mountainous, riding on loose trails with loose gravel underneath. And what we tend to do when we take off, we don't pedal. You're most vulnerable when you're trying to pedal off from a standstill on a steep slope with gravel, under the rear wheel. It's really hard work, and you're vulnerable, and it's a dangerous time to be actually, point of riding the bicycle. So what we normally tend to do is we get sat on the bike properly with our weight on the saddle, which means then there's full weight on the back wheel for traction. We lock our arms out, with the brake on obviously, and then we put the front throttle on. But of course the front throttle won't work because the brake lever sensor is stopping the motor. So what you do then is you release the brake, and there's this split second. It is only a split second, but when you're on a steep incline, you start to roll back, it seems like an eternity, and you panic and you put the brake back on and you're back to where you started again. Now if we don't have brake sensors, we can apply the brake, start to apply the motor with the front throttle, and then as soon as that motor starts to pull and kick in, we can release the brake, and we haven't got that sort of momentary bit where we're slipping back, that panic moment when you think you're going to go backwards down the motor. It removes that completely, and it'll be much the same as you would with a handbrake start in a car on a hill. So basically that is the reason why, one of the many reasons we're not going to put the actual, brake sensors on this bicycle. Firstly, we don't need them for the safety reasons, because we just stop pedalling and we go back to zero when we come to a standstill. We won't have all the wiring to do and the ugly wiring hanging around when we do it. They won't have to buy additional brake levers or use the system they've got with these sort of sensors and these magnets, which is pretty crap really. We won't have to use any of that either. So yeah, it's sort of going to be a win all round just by not fitting them. Okay, so we're going to get on with fitting the instrument control panel here, and straight away I think I can see a problem here. If you look, we've got the stems coming right up here, and we've got sort of 15, 20 millimeters up here of extra stem, and I think this is going to interfere with us putting the correct pitch in so that we can see it squarely, when we're riding the control panel. So I think we'll probably have to cut a bit off this stem, unfortunately. Now I wouldn't be upset about hiring the handlebars a bit more, and increasing the level in here, but that's going to put an unacceptable tension on this hydraulic pipe here, and then we're getting into sort of putting a new hydraulic pipe on and extending it to make it longer for the extra centimetre in height I'm going to gain on the handlebars. I just don't think it's worth the effort. I think we're far better just to take these off, knock down the threaded boss further down into the stem, and then cut this bit of excess off the top of the stem. But we'll try it again in a minute and see. So we're going to fit to this the Bafang 800S display unit. This is the same one that we fit to all our bikes, and I'll explain to you quickly what the reasons are behind that. Firstly, it's a black and white screen. Now, yeah, they do some really nice fancy screens with lots of complicated modes in them and whatever. But the bottom line is we're in Spain, it's a hot sunny country all the time, and colour displays can be really difficult to see in sunny weather. Not black and white ones are always better. Now there's never ever an occasion where we can't see our displays clearly exactly what level we're on, and work the displays clearly, even on the hottest and sunniest of days. So it's a good call there from a visual point of view, and being actually to see the control panel. Another reason for it is that one actually comes with 9 pedal assist levels on it. As we only use about the first 4 usually, but yeah, it's handy to have the other ones if you did need them. Another additional feature on it as well is it's compatible with anything up to 24 to 52 volt. So if you wanted to put a 52 volt battery on your bike, the motor will cope with it, no problem. Your 48 volt motor will cope with it, but sometimes the displays don't always. Well, the 800S display will cope with a 52 volt battery without its innards burning out and it going pop, basically. So that's the reason for the decision to fit the 800S display unit. Okay, so we're going to try and fit this on. We're just going to loosely fit it. They do an assortment of different size rubbers to go between this and the handlebars for, different thicknesses of handlebars. Some occasions you may have to make them up yourself, which has happened on the older bikes for me in the past, but it's no biggie. And as suspected, as you can see here, this is now hitting here. Okay, so in a minute we're going to remove this again, and we'll remove all the gubbins off the top of here and cut this fork tube down a bit. But there's just one thing worthy of note and to consider when fitting the instruments to an e-bike, and I'll demonstrate this on the other bicycles. You find that almost all accessories that got on the handlebars seem to use the same centres of mounting points. So if you're not careful, say for instance you want to fit a handlebar mount, you will find that the handlebar mount here, where it mounts to the handlebars, is exactly the same as the instrument mounts width there. So you're kind of stuck. How are you going to mount them unless you sort of do one way and off the other way, which is going to look a bit crap. So the solution we've came up with is actually using one of these extension instrument bars here you can buy. This one is actually a power bank as well. Again, they're dirt cheap on AliExpress. They work really well and well handy in emergency if you could just plug your phone in or drone in or whatever you want to quickly put a big charge boost in there. It brings also the instruments, if you're on a touring bike and you sat more upright, a little more closer to your face. And then that allows you, of course, then to be able to put your handlebar mount you know, mount on there and everything. And the same goes on with Anthea's bicycle as well. We've had to do the same because we use the same bags again on there, and she's just got the mount but without the power bank on it. And that's worked really well for that. Also, it means you can got full adjustment backs and forwards where you want the instruments, and up and twist it up and down that way as well. It's a really good option if you want to put additional accessories on the handlebars. So again, thinking ahead, you know, these are things you've got to think about when you're building the bike. What other accessories are you going to need to put on this bicycle, and are what you're fitting instruments, motors, etc., batteries, are they going to fail and interfere with that? Okay, so we've got the top off that, and we've got this protruding up here about 9mm. So I think really we need to cut off this probably 10-11mm just to take it slightly below that, so that we can tighten the cap back into it. But first I'm going to try and tap this actual threaded boss deeper down into the shaft, because obviously it's too near the top at the minute. And I'm going to do this the same as I fitted it originally with a bolt. Now originally when I changed these forks, I actually put a piece of wood, I don't think I can pick it up on camera, but underneath here, and took the front wheel off, because obviously I didn't want the shot going through and buckling the wheel or whatever. This time, because it's already well in there, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to screw this long bolt in. I'm going to lift the front of the bike up off the floor and try and whack that with the lump hammer and see if that knocks it down without having to take the front wheel off. So let's give that a go. Failing that, we will have to have the front wheel off again. So I'm just lift it off the ground and give it a sharp tap. Okay, and as you can see, that's worked. So bolt back out again, and we're ready then to recut the fork stem. Okay, so there we go, all done. It's flush with the top of the handlebars there, and we're back to where we were half an hour ago, so hopefully we can move things forwards a bit now. Just want to say, don't know what you guys think out there, but this modern system now on these bikes, even though it's more modern, it's certainly not superior to the old system, and from an engineering point of view, you know, it's a couple of steps back. I much prefer the older system, which is on this bike, where you've got your bearings inside the neck here, and they're tightened down with a nut and a locking nut, and completely separate to any steering or handlebars at the top here. You can tension them separately, and it's one hell of a lot superior, hell of a lot more superior than the system, this modern system, where you've got to put these spacers in, and you rely on this sort of boss inside the tube here that often when riding works its way up and then takes the tension off the bearings. Now they do a special conversion where it's like a bar that goes straight through with this all the way through to the bottom, and like a nut that goes underneath to clamp it all together. But again, it's a bit of a botch when really the solution was to go back to the drawing board and start again and redesign it. Not a good system. Okay, so that's the instruments offered up in position. Still not ideal. Let's try moving the wires through to the front and doing it. Maybe they're binding. Okay, that's a bit better. Okay, so we tried these rubbers in these handlebars. They're too thick. The other ones are thicker again. So I think this is going to clamp straight to the handlebars. So we'll try the screws in it and see if it's enough. Okay, that's tight, so didn't need the rubbers at all. Okay, so that's the display on this straight away. I can see I'm not going to be happy with this. I often have to play around with this a few times till I'm, happy with where the wires are going. There's straight away the wire coming out from there, and it's going to go across to here. I would much rather it came out from underneath here, so I can sort of hide it under the handlebar a bit. So it's not on show. Just me being particular, but you've only got to do it once, so why not take the time to do it right instead of it shouting at you every time you look at it. Okay, so I've had a little bit of play around with the wires off camera. I'm not going to bore you with that. I mean, each bike's different, so you need to play around with different options. I'm quite happy with that there. It comes really nicely just here in the front position. Hopefully it's going to be the right pitch on that when I'm sat on the saddle. I've had a quick try and it looks okay, but it's not really easy to tell until you actually ride him. May mess about with this wire a bit more. Now this wire is going to go to the right down to the motor, so it's easy to take this out sort of out the back, wind it around this cable here, which is going to go underneath into here, and then attach into the frame here. So yeah, that's more or less done. I ain't going to mess about with that. But now we've got the controversial subject of the front throttle. In my opinion, a must-have on a mountain bike if you're doing, or an e-bike if you're doing mountain expeditions, and you're going up into mountains with loose gravel and that sort of thing. Solely just from taking off point, when you first start off, you need, hands firmly on the handlebars. You don't need to be pedalling, have the added thing of trying to pedal from a standstill, and the throttle's really handy for that. So regardless of the legislation on it, I always fit it. At the end of the day, if you're going to go into an area where there's likely to be a lot of police presence, or they're a place are likely to bother you, then you can always unplug it. I mean, it's on the bike, but it's not usable. So, and if they, if you question further about it, you just say, well, yeah, it's left on there because when I'm on private land, I'll plug it back in again. So as long as it's not working, there's no reason actually why you should get nicked for it. But of course, it depends on the officer who stops you. Okay, so moving on to my bicycle, I've actually got my front throttle on the other side. Now, ideally, I would have liked it on this side. Because I ride motorcycles and having a throttle sort of on the right hand is more natural for me, but it doesn't really make a lot of difference. I have got used to it, and the reason I've done that is firstly these are butterfly handlebars, so it's not too easy to put it on, and also there's a lot going on this side of the bike. You've got the derailleur, you've got your thumb gear up, your finger gear down, brake levers. I'll put the bell on here, but yeah, it just seemed better to put it on the other side. Now Amphia's, again, that's on the correct side really, but there's another thing you've got to consider, is there isn't always enough clearance. We're really tight up against the sort of the gear shifter here, so you're having to make compromises on where the front throttle is, and also what height or twist of the gear levers are for them to be comfortable with your hand. And chances are it's going to be a compromise where the gear shifter isn't quite where you would want it to be, and the front throttle's not quite where you'd like it to be. But anyway, that's where Anthea preferred it. It works okay with the shifter she's got on there. I know for a fact it won't work well with Shimano Dior shifters. There's just not enough sort of clearance here to do it. And even though this has got the sort of the standard ones that came from China on this, there's a good chance that this may get changed over to Dior as well if they don't function, well under pressure. So yeah, I've got to allow for that as well. So I think first I'm going to try the front throttle sort of here next to the controller. So I'm going to have a little mess about off camera. I won't bore you with it because obviously all bikes are going to be different and it depends what setup you've got. Okay, so I've got that sorted. I did go for this way in the end. I tried it both sides. These handlebar grips lock off here and in the ends through end caps, so it's easy to slide these off. Didn't normally have the normal problem I have where they're stuck to the handlebars and have a hell of a job getting them off. So it's easy to try all options, but eventually I did settle on basically the same setup as I've got on my other bicycle, and that's fine. I think all these wires here are all going to sort of bunch together and tidy up along underneath here, and you're not going to really see much of it. Now you will find, if you're adjusting things, say for instance I've adjusted the level of this brake lever, I had to do that first and then put this on afterwards because obviously the nuts and the bolts are being sort of covered. So yeah, you will have a bit of messing about to do, but it's worth taking the time to try it, and get it right, because at the end of the day you've only got to do it once, and it saves you it annoying you on the trail or having to take it apart again and start all over again. Okay, so now we've got all the handlebar area sorted. We've got it sort of more or less where we want it, barring a few minor tweaks. I think we're going to drop back down, get the battery off, and try and get this all motor lined up where we want it, and see if we can get these cables on the inside of this tube here. Okay, so we've got the bicycle back on the rack and the other way around, and we're going to start addressing the little things, the little niggles that I'm not 100% happy with that I want to change. I would like to get this motor twist it a lot further this way and up closer towards the frame. But what's restricting that at the minute is this cable. Now, looking at this cable here, this is quite thick round here, this casing round it. I don't really want to squash it, but I'm thinking maybe I can strip a section of it between here and replace it with some heat shrink to make the sort of the cable sort of oval shape rather than round in between here. I'm not concerned about doing that because there's no sharp edges between it. It's smooth. Obviously, it's protected by the frame one side and the motor the other side. So there seems no reason why we shouldn't thin that cable out. And, you know, there's no risk to actually be in any danger of, you know, wire shorting out, anything like that. Also, being as I've got to move these cables from here to come out the back here, I will have to cut these connectors off. And I'm sort of considering, you know, I could probably put some thinner spade connectors in, and that means that the hole I have to put in the frame will be smaller to thread them through. But then I've come to the conclusion, well, why not just solder them? They'll be even, you know, thinner still, and also it means then it's going to be a better connection than any electrical connector is going to be if I actually solder them together, and then again, you know, we heat shrink the bare wires afterwards. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this bit off here, take this bit off here, and have a little sort of examine further with the wires and see what we could do to sort of remedy this problem, which I'm not happy with. And now I've threaded the cable through into here, and if you look, it's not bad, but it's still a bit restrictive. I don't know. And we could centre that in there. Yeah, certainly a bit of lumpy there. Okay, now I think I've changed my mind again. If you look how I've just done that, that sort of just goes around the edge around there, that cable. That's got that really tight up there now. So now I don't think I will take the casing off. Let's leave the casing on there, and we'll just put it, you know, into there gently. There's nothing for it to gouge on there. That's just fine. I'll take you know, shorten that a bit around there. But I think that's going to be fine going around there, and the cable on the other side. So then the next step is we're going to think where we're going to put this hole. I mean, ideally I'd want to put it out of sight here, but I think that's going to cause us those problems again. And obviously we've got to be mindful of where we put these holes in doesn't weaken the frame in, you know, in a bad place. Now we've got a joint of several things come together here, so this is quite a strong part of the frame here. Hence this is why they put the shock absorber here. So I think a hole in here isn't going to make a great deal of difference. So I'm thinking, looking at that, we come across, we probably want a hole in it about here. So okay, I think we have another look around that, make sure I'm 100% sure, because obviously once that hole's in there, there's no going back. And I'll dig out the selection of actual rubber grommets I've ordered as well. Okay, I've come to the decision. We're going to have to put a hole in here, a bit bigger than I would have liked, but we're sort of restricted with it. This connector here is 12mm wide, or a little under 12mm wide, so it's really got to be a 12mm hole to thread that cable up into there. Now, up at the top here, unfortunately, it's going to have to be a 12mm hole as well, because the thickness of these two cables, the thickness of the cable and one of the connectors, you know, when we feed that through that hole there, that's the minimum we could do with that as well. And then, of course, we've got this connector here and this whole cable that's got to go all the way up the down tube here, and sort of any excess threaded into it as well. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark, I'll put some tape in here, I'm going to mark the hole where I want to do it, be 100% sure. I've got these grommets to go in afterwards. Obviously the cables have to be threaded for that first, and then fed up for the tube. When I'm happy, I'll sort of push the grommet in around the cables just to stop it from shearing on the edge of the hole and that. So I'm going to mark that, get the motor off, and then it's going to be the stage of drilling, and there'll be no going back from that point. Okay, so that's the first pilot hole in, a 1.5. We're going to gradually go up bit by bit, gradually increasing the drill bit. Carefully does it. Slow speed. There we go. Next size up. It's a 4.5. We're going to go to a 5.5. There we go. And so on and so on. I'll bring you back in. Okay, and that's 10mm, we need 12mm, but that's the largest that will go in this drill, so we're going to have to get a bigger drill out. And there we go, we're through. So, give me a minute, moment of truth. And that's just a little bit tight, that. Let's just try the motor one. That's a little bit tight as well. I've got a slightly bigger drill bit, I'm going to just whack that through. Okay, so the next sizes I've found is a 13mm. I'm looking for some, hopefully not for us. I'm going to do it a mil wider because obviously it's a long connector and we've got to get it around this bend here, so we need a certain amount of flex. So yeah, 30mm is what it's going to have to be. So gently, gently. And there we go, done. Let's try the connector. There he is. And he goes in easy. And yeah, we could twist him up around the corner and he's going up. Okay. We're going to get him out again though. Yeah, that's it. And it's got to be that really for us to be able to work it. Otherwise, we're just not going to be able to get it in. Let's try our grommet again. Yeah, and our grommet's still in there tight as well. This is a silicone grommet. So he's still in tight in there, and I think we probably want a little bit of actual silicone around it when we finally do put it in, just to protect the edges of the aluminium. As I'm sure you're all aware, once aluminium is exposed to the air, it starts eroding, corroding instantly, oxidising. So yeah, we could just seal that edge as well a bit, keep the water out of it, that'd be great. Okay, let's start with the top then. Okay guys, and that's that top hole done. I'm sorry I didn't film it, but I could barely get in there myself with a drill, let alone the camera on the tripod as well. Luckily the actual 30mm that went through last time, it actually has a narrower shaft, so I can actually do it all with the battery drill. So it helped with the limited room here. All done, the grommet fits nicely. So I think now we're going to get on to the next stage of drilling the actual cable holes for the battery down here. Okay, so we've got the bike back down again in a better position, and we're back with the AliExpress gubbins to try and get this rivet out here from the lower bottle. This is where we're going to pass the cables through. Okay, so that's actually drilled in the actual rivet. The threaded rivet is actually popped out, so that's drilled out completely. So I'm going to measure this hole, see what we've got. That's coming in at 8.2, more than enough I think for the two cables to go through there. We'll quickly try them and then we're going to call that done. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so we've got the bike back up on the stand. It's getting on a bit now. We're due rain in sort of the next half an hour, but I think we're just going to push it a little bit more and see if we could just get a draw cord in this hole, out this hole at the bottom, and see if we can get that main cable up through that tube. We'll have a go at it. If it's super fiddly and a pain in the backside, which it's likely to be, we'll call it a day because it's getting on. And if it works, well, great, that's just a bonus. Okay, first attempt, I think we'll try feeding it in for the top, get gravity on our side, feed it down the tube and see if we can get it to come out through the bottom. Well, it's down there. Some narrow nose pliers. And we got it. That wasn't bad. Okay, so again, feeding into top on the end of the draw line. I think it's probably not going to work the first 2 or 3 times, but we'll have a go anyway. I'm just going to jam this down into the end of the connector and then get some insulation tape around it and see if it's going to draw through. Obviously, I can't put too much around this because we've got limited space. Okay, and I'm afraid that wasn't a success. First attempt was a fail. I got it right down to the bottom and I was trying to get some narrow nose pliers out, but I was starting to wreck the end of the connector and I don't want to damage this. I'm not too worried about the casing, but I don't want to damage the contacts inside. So I think we'll have a go at that when we're fresh in the morning.